Stand up.
Stand up.
Now.
What's this about?
Don't ask questions. Stand up.
I'm just sitting here.
We got a call on you. Step away from the table.
Call for what?
You're being detained.
On what grounds?
Suspicious activity.
Warren Ross had been an FBI special agent for 9 years. On his day off, in a coffee shop 3 blocks from his apartment, he was handcuffed by a patrol officer who never once asked his name. It starts small, the way these things always do. 7:48 a.m., October. A coffee shop on Broad Street, not a chain, one of those neighborhood spots with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. Morning light through the windows. Espresso machine hissing. A few people scattered around, nobody paying attention to each other. Just a regular morning in a regular place. Warren Ross walks in at 7:51. Joggers, gray quarter zip, white sneakers, no badge, no lanyard, no reason for anyone to know what he does for a living. He's been coming here for months. They make the only black coffee in the neighborhood that doesn't taste burned. He orders a large, sits in the corner booth, opens his laptop, checks his email, scrolls his phone, the kind of nothing that fills a day off before it really starts. He doesn't know it yet, but in approximately 19 minutes, he'll be in handcuffs, and the person who puts him there will have no legal reason to do it. Behind the counter, there's a barista, new, maybe 3 weeks in. She watches him for a while, not long, just enough. He's sitting alone. He has a bag next to him. He glances around the shop a couple of times the way anyone does when they're waiting for their coffee to cool. But she reads it differently. She steps into the back room around 7:56 and calls 911. The report is short. A man sitting alone, acting suspicious, has a bag, keeps looking around. That's it. No weapon mentioned, no threat described, no behavior that would hold up in any report. Just a feeling dressed up as a phone call. And that call lands on the screen of Officer Joseph Bates, 7 years with Millfield PD, Patrol Division. Decent record on paper, 2 prior excessive force complaints, but one was dismissed and the other closed after a retraining course he never finished. As far as the department was concerned, his file was clean. But that file was about to stop mattering. Bates pulls into the lot at 8:09 a.m., parks at an angle, doesn't call it in, doesn't wait for backup. Steps out of his cruiser and walks straight through the front door, like he already knows exactly who he's looking for. And he does. That's the problem. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe. Because what Officer Bates does next to a man sitting alone with a coffee and a laptop will be the last decision he ever makes as a cop. Bates doesn't scan the room, doesn't look at the couple by the window, doesn't glance at the college kid. His eyes go straight to the corner booth to Ross and stay there. He walks over. Not fast, not slow. The kind of walk that says, this has already been decided. Sir, I need you to stand up for me. Ross looks up from his laptop. Calm. Not startled, not defensive, just confused. The way anyone would be if a stranger in uniform interrupted their morning for no visible reason. Excuse me? Stand up. Bates says it again. Same tone. A little louder. Ross doesn't stand. He closes his laptop halfway and looks at him directly. Can I ask what this is about? Bates doesn't answer. Instead, he repositions, shifts his weight, puts his hand on his belt, not on his weapon, but close enough to make the point. We got a call. Someone matching your description. Ross pauses on that. Matching my description. What description? Bates doesn't clarify. He doesn't say what the caller reported, doesn't mention the barista, doesn't say what the supposed suspicious behavior was. He just repeats himself. I need you to stand up and step away from the table. A woman 2 tables over looks up. Her coffee is halfway to her mouth, but it's stopped there now. She's watching. Ross stays seated. His voice is level. Officer, I've been sitting here for 15 minutes. I ordered a coffee. I'm on my laptop. What exactly did this call say I was doing? That's not your concern. It is, if you're telling me to stand up. A pause. Bates's jaw tightens. The first sign. Not anger, yet irritation. The kind that comes from someone not reacting the way he expected. He expected compliance. Quick, easy, no questions. What he's getting instead is a man who's asking him to explain himself. And he doesn't like it. "I'm not going to ask you again," Bates says. Ross studies him for a second, not challenging, reading, the way someone does when they've been trained to assess situations for a living. He's clocking everything: Bates's posture, his hand placement, his breathing, the fact that he came in alone, the fact that he hasn't identified what the actual complaint was. And here's what Bates doesn't understand yet. Ross isn't being difficult. He isn't resisting. He's doing what any person with knowledge of use of force law would do, establishing the basis for the contact, because there isn't one. Ross speaks again. Slow, clear. "What's your name and badge number?" Bates blinks. Just once, but it's there. Most people don't ask that. Not this early. Not this calmly. "Why do you need that?" Bates asks. "Because you haven't told me why you're here, and I'd like a record of this interaction." The woman, 2 tables over, sets her coffee down. She reaches for her phone. Not obvious about it, just a quiet shift in her hand. The college kid has taken one earbud out. Bates leans forward slightly. "You've got a lot of questions for someone who should be cooperating." "I am cooperating," Ross replies. "I'm sitting here. I haven't moved. I haven't raised my voice. I'm asking you to tell me why you're standing at my table." Another pause. Longer this time. And in that pause, something shifts behind Bates's eyes. He's not seeing a man asking reasonable questions anymore. He's seeing a problem, a challenge. Someone who isn't falling in line. And in his experience, people who don't fall in line are people who have something to hide. That's the misread, right there. Calm doesn't mean compliant in Bates's world. Calm means suspicious. He straightens up, pulls his shoulders back, and his voice changes lower, harder, the kind of tone that closes a conversation instead of continuing one. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand up. You're going to put your hands where I can see them, and you're going to step outside with me." Ross looks at him. "Am I being detained?" Bates doesn't hesitate. "Yeah, you are." "On what charge?" Bates's answer is immediate, flat, and completely wrong. Suspicious activity and failure to comply. Ross holds his gaze for 3 full seconds. He knows legally, procedurally, constitutionally, that neither of those is an arrestable offense. Suspicious activity isn't a charge. Failure to comply requires a lawful order, and nothing Bates has said so far qualifies. But he also knows something else. He knows what happens when a black man argues law with a cop who's already made up his mind in a public place with no backup present. So he closes his laptop, slowly, sets his phone on the table, screen up, and stands. Ross stands, hands visible, no sudden movements. Everything about him is controlled not because he's nervous, but because he's done this before. Not this exactly, but rooms where one wrong move changes everything. He knows how to hold still when it matters. Bates doesn't wait. He grabs Ross's wrist and turns him around. Hard, fast, the kind of force that doesn't match the situation. A man standing up from a coffee shop booth. Hands behind your back. Ross doesn't resist, but he speaks. "I'm complying. There's no reason for this." Bates ignores him, pulls both wrists together. The cuffs go on tight, metallic, loud in a room that's gone completely silent. Ross's laptop slides off the table from the movement, hits the floor. The screen cracks against the tile, his coffee tips. Brown liquid spreading across the table, dripping over the edge. The barista behind the counter is frozen. She called this in. She asked for a check on a suspicious person. What she's watching now doesn't look like a check. It looks like an arrest. And the man hasn't done anything. Bates pushes Ross forward, guiding him toward the counter. Not gently. Ross's hip catches the edge of a chair. He stumbles slightly, catches himself, stays upright. "Easy," Ross says. "I'm not going anywhere." Bates presses him against the counter, one hand on his back, the other reaching for Ross's pockets. No question, no request, no asking what's in them, just reaching. Ross speaks again. Calm, but firm now. You don't have consent to search me. Bates doesn't stop. I don't need it. Yes, you do. Bates pauses for half a second, then keeps going, pulls out a wallet, sets it on the counter, pulls out keys, sets those down too, reaches into the other pocket, nothing. He opens the wallet, flips through it quickly, barely looks. Credit cards, a gym membership, some cash. He closes it and drops it on the counter, like it's nothing. He missed the inside pocket, the one with the federal ID. The woman 2 tables over has her phone raised now, not hiding it anymore. Recording. The college kid is filming too, from a different angle. 2 cameras, 2 witnesses. And Bates hasn't noticed either of them. You done? Ross asks quietly. Bates doesn't answer. Instead, he keys his radio. Unit 14, I've got one detained at the Broad Street coffee shop, requesting a second unit. Ross stands there, face against the counter, cuffed. And he says something that Bates doesn't understand yet. You should run my name. Bates ignores him. A second cruiser pulls into the lot 4 minutes later. Officer Dana Morello, 3 years on the force. She walks in, sees Ross against the counter, cuffs on, Bates standing over him, and stops. She doesn't move to assist. She doesn't take a position. She just stands near the door and watches. Her hand isn't on her belt. Her body language isn't aggressive. It's uncertain. She sees the same thing everyone else in this shop. Sees a man in joggers and sneakers, cuffed against a counter. No weapon, no struggle, no threat. And a cop who looks like he's running on adrenaline and assumption. What's the situation? She asks carefully. Suspicious individual, Bates says. Refused to cooperate. Ross turns his head slightly. I asked for his badge number. That's what he means by refused to cooperate. Morello looks at Bates, then at Ross, then at the 2 phones recording. She says nothing, steps back slightly, posts near the door, and that's where she stays close enough to be present, far enough to not be involved, the kind of distance that protects a career. Bates keys his radio again. I need a name run. Last name Ross, first name Warren. He rattles off the details from the driver's license in the wallet. Dispatch confirms. Stand by. Ross stands still, patient, because he already knows what that system is about to return. And when it does, this entire situation, the cuffs, the search, the cracked laptop, the spilled coffee, all of it becomes something Officer Joseph Bates cannot take back. 14 seconds pass. Then dispatch comes through. The voice on the other end sounds different now, slower, careful. Unit 14. Hold your position. Do not transport. Bates frowns. He keys back. Copy. What's the flag? A pause. Longer than normal. Then, Federal Agency marker on file. Confirm your status and stand by. Bates's hand drops from his radio. He looks at Ross, really looks at him for the first time since he walked through the door. Ross doesn't turn around, doesn't say a word, doesn't need to, because the system just did it for him. Bates stands still, radio in hand, Federal Agency marker. He's never seen one come back on a routine stop, not once in 7 years. He keys his radio. Dispatch, can you clarify the flag? Silence for a few seconds. Then, negative. Unit 14. Do not transport. Hold your position. That's it. No detail, no explanation. Just a door slamming shut where there used to be an open lane. And now Bates is standing in a coffee shop with a cuffed man and no idea what he's stepped into. Morello heard it too. She's still by the door, but her posture has changed. She's not watching Ross anymore. She's watching Bates. Doing the math he still refuses to do. Ross speaks. Same voice, same calm. Hasn't changed once since this started. You should run my full credentials. Inside pocket of the wallet. You missed it. Bates looks at the wallet on the counter. Opens it again. This time slower. Finds the inside pocket, the one he skipped the first time, because he wasn't really looking. He was confirming what he'd already decided. He pulls out the ID, dark blue, gold seal. 3 letters across the top that change everything. FBI. His hand drops slightly. He stares at it, then at Ross, then back at the ID. Like checking it twice will make it say something different. It doesn't. A patrol supervisor pulls into the lot 6 minutes later. Not because anyone called him, because dispatch flagged it up the chain the moment the federal marker came back. Standard protocol. The kind of procedure that exists for exactly this situation. He walks in. Sergeant Torres, 15 years on the force. Reads the room in 3 seconds. Cuffed man. 2 phones recording. Bates standing there looking like the ground moved under him. Torres looks at the ID on the counter, then at Ross, then at Bates. Tell me you didn't. Bates opens his mouth. I didn't know. Torres cuts him off. Take them off. Now. Bates unlocks the cuffs. Left one first, then the right. Ross brings his wrists forward, red marks already pressing into the skin. He rubs the left one once, then straightens his jacket and picks up his phone from the counter. He bends down, picks up his laptop, cracked screen, looks at it for a second, then sets it on the table next to the spilled coffee. Torres steps toward him. Sir, Ross holds up a hand. Not aggressive, just enough. Then he looks at Bates directly. First time since the cuffs came off. You never asked my name. Bates says nothing. You never asked why I was here. Never asked what I do. You walked through that door and decided. Silence. That's not a stop. That's not police work. Ross pauses. That's a decision you made before you saw anything except what I look like. Bates stares at the floor. Morello stares at the wall. Torres stands between them with the expression of a man, already calculating how much paperwork this is going to generate, and knowing that paperwork is the least of it. The barista behind the counter hasn't moved. Her hand is over her mouth, because she's only now beginning to understand what her phone call set in motion. And the 2 cameras still recording, they've captured everything. Every word, every assumption, every second of it. Torres drives Bates back to the precinct himself. Doesn't let him finish his shift. Doesn't let him take his own cruiser. Bates sits in the passenger seat in silence, the same seat where suspects usually sit in his world. The irony isn't lost on anyone. His badge and service weapon are collected before noon. By 2 p.m., Internal Affairs has pulled the body cam footage. All of it. From the moment Bates stepped out of his cruiser to the moment Torres told him to remove the cuffs. 18 minutes and 43 seconds. Every word, every grab, every moment. He chose not to ask a single question before putting a man in handcuffs. Ross doesn't file the complaint that day. He goes home, puts ice on his wrist, opens his cracked laptop to see if it still works. It doesn't. Then he calls a lawyer, not a personal injury attorney, not someone who chases settlements, a civil rights litigator, the kind who takes cases that set precedent. The lawsuit is filed 11 days later. Section 1983, deprivation of rights under color of law. Fourth Amendment violation, unlawful detainment, unlawful search, excessive force. The filing names Bates individually and the city of Millfield as co-defendant. Then the discovery process begins. And discovery is where the real story surfaces. Bates's 2 prior excessive force complaints, the ones his department marked as resolved, get unsealed. The first was from a 22-year-old college student pulled over for a broken taillight. He alleged Bates yanked him out of the vehicle and searched his car without consent. The complaint was dismissed. No body cam footage available, Bates said the camera malfunctioned. The second was from a 36-year-old father of 3, detained outside a grocery store. Same pattern, vague call, no real suspicion, immediate escalation. That complaint was closed after Bates was assigned a use of force retraining course. Department records show he attended 1 session out of 4. Both complainants were black men. The pattern was always there. The department just never looked at it or chose not to. Bates is terminated 9 weeks after the incident. not suspended, not reassigned, fired. The termination letter cites violation of departmental use of force policy, failure to establish reasonable suspicion, and conduct unbecoming an officer. His union files a grievance. It goes nowhere. Morello, the officer who stood by the door and said, "Nothing is reassigned to desk duty, pending review. She isn't fired. She isn't disciplined. She's just moved somewhere quiet." Her report states she observed the interaction, but did not perceive an immediate need to intervene. 14 words that say everything about why these situations keep repeating. The city settles 7 months later. $3.2 million. No admission of wrongdoing. That's how these settlements always read. The legal language says one thing. The dollar amount says another. The department announces a review of its use of force procedures. 2 policy changes come out of it. Mandatory body cam activation, which was already policy, just never enforced. And a new requirement for officers to state the reason for detainment before initiating physical contact, the kind of rule that shouldn't need to exist. But does now, because of what happened on a Tuesday morning on Broad Street. And here's the thing that stays with you. If Ross had been anyone else, no badge, no federal agency, no resources to hire a civil rights attorney, this story doesn't end with a settlement. It doesn't end with a termination. It ends with a man being arrested in a coffee shop for doing nothing, processing through the system, and maybe getting the charges dropped 3 months later. No accountability, no consequences, nothing changes. The $3.2 million didn't buy justice. It bought visibility, and the difference between the two is the difference between a system that works and a system that only works when it's forced to. Warren Ross had been an FBI agent for 9 years. He'd served federal warrants, run counterintelligence cases, and testified in front of grand juries. But on his day off, in a coffee shop 3 blocks from his apartment, none of that mattered, because the only thing Officer Joseph Bates saw when he walked through that door was what he'd already decided to see. And that decision cost him his career, cost the city $3.2 million, and cost everyone watching a little more faith in the word protect. Tell me in the comments, was this just bad policing, or was it a pattern? And be honest, if Warren Ross didn't have a federal badge in his wallet, would Joseph Bates still have a job today?